Everyone, my name is Ana Martha Ayala, and I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. As a reminder, I do every video in English and Spanish, and the degree theory is based on modern Western astrology using the Placidus house system. Now, in today's video, I wanted to talk to you about Mercury going retrograde in Pisces. I wanted to give you a brief description of the 2026 Mercury retrograde cycle because there's a huge change. The retrogrades are going to be in the water signs, Pisces, Scorpio, Cancer. So it's going to be all about feelings, intuition, emotions, whether it's sadness, anger, happiness, frustration, the way at the moment when you're going to make a decision. So make sure that your emotions are in check if you need to decide something during the Mercury's retrograde cycles this year, because the decisions are going to be based on your intuition, your gut feelings, your instincts, and not so much logic. So Mercury goes retrograde. When Mercury goes retrograde, according to the degree theory, the signs that are mostly affected are Gemini and Virgo because Mercury is the ruler of those signs. Now, it affects all the signs, obviously, in the house that the retrograde falls, right? Wherever, in this case, it's going to be Pisces. So this means that the energy will intensify when it gets close to 3 to 4 degrees of where the planet will station. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with a retrograde, and this applies to any retrogrades happening to Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, the rest of the planets. It's not just for Mercury. But what happens is that from our point of view here on Earth, we see that the planet is moving forward, right? But when the planet stations, it stops, okay? And then from our viewpoint, it starts to go back. It starts to retrograde. Now, the planet doesn't go back, but from our viewpoint, it looks like it's going back. And so when it's going back, then it stations or it stops again, and then it moves forward after the retrograde period is over. So chances are that for your personal chart, the houses that will be affected will be the Gemini, the Virgo, and of course the Pisces house because the retrograde is in Pisces. Now, this Mercury retrograde happens February 26th through March 19th of 2026, and it will station at 22 degrees of Pisces on February 24th through February 28th. So that is the first stationing when it will stop and then move back. Then Mercury turns direct on March 20th at 8 degrees of Pisces. And that stationing period is from March 18th through March 24th. Now, there's something called a shadow period. So, this is a mini astrology lesson for you guys. A shadow period is happening from March 20th through April 9th. And what does this mean? It means that the retrograde started at 22 degrees and then Mercury went backwards, right? Until it got to 8 degrees. And now that it's turning direct, it will not clear 22 degrees, the first degree that it started, until April 10th. So the shadow period from March 20th through April 9th is when Mercury is retracing all of those degrees, right? It's retracing 9, 10, 11, 12 until it gets to 22 degrees, which is where the retrograde first started. That is called the shadow period, okay? So just want you guys to know that. Now, Mercury is the natural ruler of the 3rd and the 6th house in a natural chart. What is a natural chart? Is when you have an Aries rising. Pisces is all about memories, the good, the bad, well, the good, the not so great, it's all about the past. It's also about daydreaming, having nice thoughts, maybe even nice connections, because Venus is going to be in Pisces by the end of this retrograde. And of course, Pisces deals with having idealistic, optimistic views, those rose-colored glasses. So careful about getting sad or depressed, thinking about the ex-boyfriend, the ex-girlfriend, the ex-husband, the ex-wife, you know, the ex-partner. Um, just be careful your thoughts don't turn negative, right? In my experience, a lot of Pisces tend to live in the past with a lot of regrets. So when Mercury retrogrades in Pisces, careful with psychological anguish, hopelessness. Maybe you need to process some grief. Careful with addictions as a coping mechanism, right? Pisces rules to smoke, but it can be, depending on your chart, it can be alcohol. Pisces also rules drugs, so just be careful, um, not to go back to any of those behaviors that help you deal with whatever's going on as a coping mechanism. Now, if I am not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a, medical professional, if you are having a surgery and it is not an emergency, in other words, it's an elective surgery, I would wait because Neptune is the ruler of Pisces and Neptune rules anesthesia. Mercury rules your mind. So the anesthesia can have an effect on your mind. Okay, so, you know, things you might need to recover a lot more time for your memory to come back. It will affect your memory. Thank goodness that this retrograde is not happening during the holidays, because then you would be thinking of all the people that have passed and how nice the holidays were when you were a kid, etc. So thankfully that this is not the case. On top of Mercury being retrograde, during this retrograde period, we are going to have a total lunar eclipse in Virgo at 12 degrees 51 minutes. So something may be ending in your Virgo house that you need to make an emotional decision on. If you have any planets plus or minus 12 degrees, even 13 degrees. So let's say like from 9 to 17 in Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, or Sag, this retrograde period will be significant for you. All right. So, just be mindful of that. Something will end in your Virgo house. Now, as usual, I am one of those astrologers that with Mercury retrograde, I don't recommend that you buy anything electronic because the item will have electrical issues, or expensive items, because at the end of the retrograde, you will change your mind. You won't like the way the clothes fit. You won't like, the way whatever it is that you bought, you say, oh my God, they put it on sale. So, now what, right? Needless to say, travel should not start or end at the beginning or the ending of the retrograde, especially during the stationing period. Um, because that's when all of the airline flights get canceled, the reservations are messed up, or your car, your rental car, something happens, so I would not recommend starting or ending travel on the beginning or ending on this retrograde, or any Mercury retrograde for that matter. So obviously this is when cars, motorcycles break down, your computer crashes, your phone dies, or it gets lost. If you need to buy one of these items because your phone died or your computer crashed and you need it for work, get an extended warranty. I would not initiate any business deals or sign contracts or leases or any documents. Um, if you have to sign something, make sure that everything that they promised is in the document. Make sure that the numbers are correct, okay? Because people to sell you something, they'll talk, oh my God, the moon, the stars, everything, and then when you see it in writing, it's like, oh, what happened, right? So Mercury retrograde actually is a great time to look for something that you have lost in the past. A lot of, chances are that you will find it. And obviously, Mercury retrograde, you can redo a project, rewrite, review, rebudget. You get it, right? It's a re something. You need to do it over again. Now, with this Mercury retrograde in particular, there's always a good chance of miscommunication, um, because Mercury is in Pisces, and this is where Mercury it's at its fall because it rules Virgo, right? Mercury is a ruler of Virgo. So when Mercury is in the opposite sign, it's in the fall position. So miscommunications can happen big time. One really special thing that's happening with this Mercury retrograde is that at the end of the Mercury, it will conjunct the North Node. So there will be something, a fated path, where you have 8 degrees of Pisces. Whatever house this degree falls in, because of the conjunction to the North Node, something fated will happen. Now, obviously, if you have no planets there, then this is not applicable to you. But um, again, let's say if you have Venus as an example, then you might meet somebody in love or business that it is a fated relationship or a fated meeting. I'm not saying that you're gonna find, your dream person, but it may happen. Just make sure not to start the relationship until Mercury goes direct, right? So, let's take a look at the 12 ascendants now, and I am going to do something very different. I am going to start with Pisces. So Pisces, Mercury retrograde is happening in your first house. And this one is big for you because Pisces is gonna have to be rethinking or thinking about all the decisions that you have made in the past, and perhaps that they weren't the best and they have brought you to where you are now. The ex-husband, the ex-boyfriend, the ex-girlfriend, the ex-boss, the ex-job, you can be going through a whirlwind of thoughts that trigger the emotions. Now, um, I also, in my experience with Pisces, I find that a lot of Pisces have big regrets because they sacrifice themselves for others and they're not appreciated the way they should be, in my opinion, right? So, what can you do, Pisces? You can't change the past, but you can learn from it and not repeat the same situation, right? If you got burned once or twice, turn off the stove and let it go. Just delete, right? But you can also review your life choices and change them going forward after Mercury goes direct, obviously. Pay attention to your dreams. The increase in your intuition, creativity, spirituality. Concentrate on positive thoughts, on idealistic thoughts, on optimistic thoughts, and of course, those rose-colored glasses, right? You can have a lot of creative thoughts and move forward when Mercury goes direct. Try to stay positive and not think about all the things, all the sacrifices that you made for your spouse. for your family, for your children, and then they just like forgot about you. Like, your spouse divorced you or something, like it didn't turn out well. Put those in the past and just focus on things that you can do going forward. But don't forget what happened, right? Now, with Aries, this Mercury retrograde is happening in your 12th house. Aries, this one can be rough for you because you can be thinking, 12th house is stuff that we don't have, right? So you could be thinking about sad times, bad experiences from your past. Mercury doesn't feel good in the 12th house because it's in the fall position. So this can be a very negative time, a dark time for your thoughts. However, you can have more artistic thoughts, more compassion. Psychic stuff can be happening as well, especially since Neptune is in Aries, right? So you are going to go through the next 15 years of being somewhat of a Pisces, right? Because this is what Pisces goes through, but now it's Aries' turn, right? So maybe you can communicate with the other side during this Mercury retrograde. Pay attention to your intuition, your dreams. Um, you may also need some solitude to kind of regroup before moving forward after this Mercury goes direct. This one is going, maybe, hopefully not. It all depends on your chart, right? But this may be a rough period for you, Aries. So for Taurus, this retrograde is happening in your 11th house. So you can be thinking, this is not such a bad place in the 11th house. You can be thinking about past friendships, maybe even from your childhood. Were you bullied as a kid? Some of those memories can be pleasant and others not so much, right? Maybe an old friend reaches out to you for a meetup, uh, to catch up on all times. You can be thinking about those goals or dreams that you had that you didn't accomplish. Well, maybe it's time to review those goals and revise the plan and go for it. Go after Mercury goes direct. Try to review, redo, reimagine goals that you had in the past that you weren't able to accomplish. Well, now it may be a time to revamp those things, right? Those dreams that you had when you were young and, life happens, right? Well, now is the time to redo, review, rebudget, um, and then when Mercury goes direct, you can implement some of them. All right, so Gemini. Gemini, Mercury retrograde is happening in your 10th house. So when Mercury goes retrograde, you and Virgo are the signs that get mostly affected because Mercury is your ruler. So you can be thinking about a past boss, a past job, how miserable you were in that position, how they mistreated you. They gave you the work that nobody wanted to do, right? Someone on a more positive note, maybe someone from a past employer, an ex-coworker, an ex-boss can reach out to you. If it's a coworker, maybe just for you to know what the gossip is where you were working at, right? The old employer. So learn from what happened in your past, you know, place and don't let it happen again. Gemini needs to stand up for themselves because they're a very chatty, friendly sign, and some people can take advantage of you, right? Dream about what things, like standard operating procedures you can create for your new position, for your new employer, for your new job. Learn from your past to speak up and stand up for yourself. Don't let people, because I said Gemini rising can be very, very talkative, right? So you need to have people listen to you. And also, there is an opportunity that may come up for not a new job, but a maybe your old employer may want you to come back and do maybe some like shifts or maybe work the weekends for them or something like that. That can happen. Don't decide anything until Mercury goes direct. Cancer. For Cancer, Mercury retrograde happens in your ninth house. So this is not a bad placement for Mercury retrograde. Perhaps memories for you are about your college days, your university days, your um, perhaps about a trip to a foreign country that you would like to go back to because you're remembering how nice of a time you had. Maybe a study abroad that you did in college or in the university that you really enjoyed. A friend from college or maybe an old professor can reach out to you to like reminisce about old times and what you did in that study abroad, or what you did in philosophy class or something like that. Or this can also be that maybe you're thinking about going back to school, right? So don't do anything. But you can research, you can research what career or what major you want to, if you're thinking about going back to school, do all the research, but do not decide anything until Mercury goes direct. Leo. For Leo, this Mercury retrograde in Pisces is happening in your eighth house. So this can have you thinking about mistakes that you've made in your investments or how much debt you're in and what you're going to do about it. Can also be you guys are going to review like the your partner's resources and how things could have worked out differently. You can't change the past. However, going forward is another story. Find ways to save money, to rebudget, right? To look at your finances. And if it means canceling subscriptions, cutting the lawn yourself, taking lunch to work, no more lattes at your favorite fast food drink place. Um, there are ways to save money that people just, oh, because I don't have the time to prepare my lunch, or I don't have the time. Yeah, make the time. You know, when you need money, you need to figure out ways to, maybe your cell phone plan, maybe you can cut out some of those extras that you have. Or if you have cable, I haven't had cable for years, okay? Since 2020, actually. Virgo. Virgo, this Mercury retrograde is happening in your seventh house. And of course, Virgo, you are one of those signs, along with Gemini, that Mercury affects greatly because it's the ruler. So this is an opposition for you. This means that you could be thinking about an ex-partner, an ex-spouse, and it could be in love or business, right? Because it's the seventh house, it's a long-term relationships. Memories that can come back may not be so positive. Maybe, hopefully they are. But if they weren't positive, learn from the experiences. So in the next relationship, you can apply those lessons, right? You can actually receive a message from an ex-spouse or an ex-business partner. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to, you know, go forward with this or not. All right. So for Libra, this Mercury retrograde happens in your sixth house. So sixth house is all about health, exercise routine, your your job. So maybe memories about an ex-coworker that didn't treat you well. that wouldn't listen to you, that wouldn't appreciate you, or maybe a supervisor that did the same thing, or a position that you had in the past and you weren't appreciated for the work that you did. So Libra needs to review the way that they communicate with coworkers. You need to learn how to speak up and stand up for yourself because Libras tend to be so diplomatic. Um, and being diplomatic doesn't mean being a pushover, right? Because people confuse that. People confuse decency with like, oh, this person, we can walk all over this person. And that's not the case. Because Libras tend to be very, very smart. They're an air sign. Um, so the house of health, you can review your diet, your exercise routine, even the way you communicate. With your coworkers, you review your health habits, the way you eat, maybe sweets, you give up sweets, or you call your old personal trainer and say, hey, listen, I want to start up this exercise routine again. Just make sure that if I were you, I would do it after Mercury goes direct. Unless you're going back to the same person, right? Your old personal trainer, then that's a different story. Like you can redo a rewrite, um, whatever. As long as you're going back with the same person, that's okay. If you're going to start to implement something completely new, wait until Mercury goes direct. Now, for Scorpio, this Mercury retrograde happens in your fifth house. So here it's the ex-boyfriend, the ex-girlfriend, um, the way, you might get a communication from an ex, right? Um, I would listen. I would pay attention to what they're saying. But if they are trying to go back with you, make sure you remember the way that they treated you, why you guys broke up, right? Because you broke up for a reason. Were they unfaithful? Were they mistreating you? Were they, not speaking to you as well as they should have? So all of these things you need to factor in. And then once Mercury goes direct, then you can decide whether you want to go back to this person or not. Or you might just keep them as a friend, not necessarily go back into a love relationship. This can also be about you thinking about your kids. Fifth house is your children. Um, and how you treat them, how you communicate with them. Are you harsh with them? Are you too strict? Um, or it can be that maybe memories from your past, when you were a child, specifically in high school. In the degree theory, fifth house rules high school. So maybe you can be thinking about, for whatever reason, how you were treated in high school. If somebody bullied you, or were you, I don't know, a class president or something like that, or how much fun you had, right? Or it could be a period where you want to travel back on vacation to a place where you've been to before and you had a good time. So, or maybe not such a great time, and you tell your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend like, no, we're not going back to that place. We need to go somewhere else. All right, Mercury retrograde happens in your fourth house. So these memories can be about your parents, your family upbringing, and the way that you were treated as a child. Maybe you want to go visit your parents and reminisce on all the good times that you had while you were growing up. That's a possibility. Hopefully that's the case. And not that your parents were too strict or too demanding or they didn't treat you properly. Now, for Sag, if you are buying a house and you are closing on this property during the Mercury retrograde, please review all the documents, especially the loan financing statement, right? Very, very carefully. Make sure that they're charging you correctly for the amount of points that you're paying for the mortgage, or that the terms are the way they said that they were going to be, that there are no surprises in the document. All right. Capricorn. For Capricorn, this Mercury retrograde happens in your third house. So for Capricorn, it's the third house, which is the house of your siblings, neighbors, extended family. Maybe you want to reestablish communication with your siblings, your cousins, aunts, uncles, your neighbors, because maybe there was a fallout with any of these groups of people, or maybe because there was a misunderstanding. And of course, when Mercury is retrograde, especially in Pisces, you need to be careful with what you say to make sure that that's what people understand, right? Third house is also short trips. So maybe you want to take a short trip back to a place that you've been to before, and it brings back very nice memories, hopefully, very appealing. So you end up having a really good time. Now, for Aquarius rising, second house. So for you guys, you are reviewing the way you spend money, the way you make money. It's all about money. It's all about your job, right? Because second house is the money that you make from the job that you do. Perhaps you start to think about an old job that you had. But because of a coworker or a boss, you had to resign or you quit, and you miss the people that you used to work with, right? Um, or maybe you're thinking about how much money you used to make, and now in this new job that you have, you maybe you had to take a pay cut, or you didn't get the job that you wanted, but because you had to quit the other one, then life happens, right? Either way, money will be a hot topic for you. It's all about re-budgeting, reviewing what you spend the money on. Also, second house is what you eat. So maybe you were thinner years ago and you have gained weight, and you may want to revisit your diet and what you eat, and you want to go ahead and try to lose weight again. I would suggest that you make a plan, right? But you start your new diet um, when Mercury goes direct. Unless you're going to go back to an old diet, then that's fine. You can start right away. But and also with money, you have to be again very, very mindful of what you spend your money on. Uh, there's a whole bunch of ways to minimize the expenses, especially now that things are so expensive because inflation. I don't care what these reports say. Every time I go to the grocery store, the bill doesn't drop below $100. And it is, yeah, and I'm not even buying any meat. It's just, regular stuff. But anyway, so I hope that this video has been helpful. If it has, please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and send it to somebody else that it may help. If you want a natal chart reading with me, please send me an email to amaastrology@aol.com. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.